Hearing no objection, it is so decided.
It was certainly a close call, but delegates at the United Nations 28th Annual Climate Change Conference have managed to preserve the illusion that its climate change policies are actually accomplishing something. The COP28 deal calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly and equitable manner, accelerating action in this critical decade so as to achieve net zero by 2050 in keeping with the science. This is not the phase-out that the climate lobby wanted, but then, even before the conference had started, the event's host, Sultan Al Jaber, who's also the head of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, had made his position clear.
I'm not in any way signing up to any discussion that is alarmist. I am here factual and I respect the science. And there is no science out there or no scenario out there that says that the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve 1.5. 1.5 is my North Star.
For those who are more skeptical about the causes of climate change, the COP28 president's comments were kind of refreshing compared to previous presidents, but others disagreed.
The oil and gas industry made a mistake in overreaching and naming the CEO of one of the largest and one of the dirtiest, by many measures, oil companies in the world as the president of the COP.
Then came the opening ceremony.
The science is clear. The 1.5-degree limit is only possible if we ultimately stop burning all fossil fuels. Not reduce, not abate, phase out with a clear time frame aligned with 1.5 degrees.
It was from that moment on that interpretation of the words phase out overshadowed COP28.
106 nations signed a document saying phase out, not phase down. Is there a red line in the presidency against phase out? What is it about phase out that the presidency has a problem with?
There are many, many views out there. And we know that this is a conference of parties of 198 countries. All of them have many differing views, even amongst those ones who want the language that you say. Our job as a COP presidency is not to have red lines. We don't have red lines.
Mr. Al-Suwaidi said it was about discussing the issue and coming up with solutions, something the COP28 president had already spoken about before the conference started.
You're asking for a phase out of fossil fuel. Please help me, show me a roadmap for a phase out of fossil fuel that will allow for sustainable socio-economic development, unless you want to take the world back into caves.
Getting all 198 countries to agree to the COP28 draft resolution was never going to be easy. In the end, China and oil-producing countries refused to sign on to an agreement committing to phase out fossil fuels, and the so-called just transition that all the countries did sign up to isn't defined and isn't binding on governments. China will continue building more coal plants, and OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, has already projected that oil demand will increase by 10.6% between 2022 and 2028.
There has been some improvements from the extremely low bar draft text that was given to us earlier this week, but the improvements have been incremental, not transformative.
The COP28 deal calls for a tripling of renewable energy capacity by 2030, but countries will still need fossil fuels to back up solar and wind. You see, renewables only generate about 20 to 40% of their stated capacity, compared to 80 to 90% for fossil fuel and nuclear power generated plants. That means that a tripling in renewable energy capacity will actually result in a much smaller increase in actual power generation.
We're not very happy because more than 100 states were actually backing the demand for a fossil fuel phase out, which is much stronger than transitioning away. So it is weaker, but it is the first time in the COP history that there is a call to transition away from all fossil fuels.
COP28 agreement signals beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era, reads the UN press release, which is exactly what Biden officials and European leaders will tell voters to justify their policies which raise the cost of energy and reduce consumer choice.
I think the UNFCCC process is broken. I think we saw so many lobbyists here. And obviously, while we are upset at the results, there's people here who are celebrating.